Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Oliver Perry Show. I'm Oliver Perry. Today I've got a guest. He's a fintech man. He works in the fintech industry. He is a real estate investor as well. He's going to help us learn how to go from zero to a large multifamily property. But first, let's get into the intro. Derrick, how are you, sir?
What's up, Oliver? How you doing, man?
Fantastic, man. Thank you for coming again, man. I really appreciate you being here. Having you on is an absolute honor. I think I covered kind of the general area of it, just the fintech piece, but if you will, I want to make sure I give you the floor because I know fintech is more complicated than I'm used to, and I'm not a numbers nerd. So I'm gonna, I'm gonna let you take the lead and go for it and give these people a understanding of who you are and what you do, and we're gonna go ahead and get into it.
Yeah. First and foremost, Derrick Carpenter. I live in Lenexa, Kansas. Married to my wife Emily, and we have four kids: a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 9, and a 3-year-old.
I'm not talking. I can't talk to you right now.
And we also and like Oliver said, I work in the fintech space. So that's really working in financial technology. If you've never heard of fintech, and I have kind of been in that space for about 18 years now, and currently in roles as general manager and executive over running actual kind of enterprise Fortune 500 type businesses around financial technology.
Nice. All right, so first of all, I apologize for the sounds you might have heard a little bit earlier, fussing at my daughter. Nonetheless, here we are, man. I'm super excited, like I said, to have you on. And one thing I definitely wanted us to get into was to talk about your experience with just multifamily, or not multifamily investing, real estate investing first, and we'll drive into multifamily. But I wanted to give them or the audience a general understanding of what your thought process is on some of the small properties, and then we're going to work our way to kind of tell them, hey, this is how you go from 0 to 100 really quick.
Yeah. I think for me, real estate has always been something that was really interesting. And in 2008, I kind of started to get my personal finances in order and really kind of cut out a lot of the debt that I had in my life. Once I freed up some of that capital, I said, okay, I want to start investing in real estate. And step one for me was really around turning my house that I was moving from, and I was moving from Bentonville, Arkansas to Atlanta.
Okay.
And I said, I'm gonna go ahead and rent my property. And I moved. And so I kind of became a landlord because, I kept the house, rented it, and that was it. And then, in 2013, I had moved back to Kansas City, where I grew up with my wife, and I decided I wanted to buy another property, and I'd been running that one in Bentonville, Arkansas for it had been about, I guess, 3 or 4 years at that point, and bought another little house and was renting that. And at that point, I kind of said, okay, after 2 years of having a couple properties, self-managing them, I said, how do I really scale up? And I kind of, my view on the single family was, it was definitely a good strategy and a way to get it going. But I didn't want to manage, 10, 20, 30 just single family houses and deal with the problems that occur when you might be, one of the houses is vacant and there's no one there to pay the rent. And so that was kind of my start around single families and what I kind of, and why I said, okay, I think I need to start scaling up and go bigger. It was because it was really where my head was around going to bigger multifamily properties.
Okay, so one thing that you mentioned in that story earlier on, and I want to make sure people catch it, is that you took a look at the numbers, took a look at where you were financially, and started, I like to call it cutting the fat, right? Just like you go into the gym, I can't eat carbs. I'm going to eat carbs. I'm a fat boy. But you can't eat carbs. You can't eat a bunch of sugary stuff. You got to cut the fat out. But most people don't get to hear how to go about doing that. Like, that always seems to be kind of the mystery. They'll get a general understanding. But how did you figure out what that fat was, Derrick, and cut it off to be able to allow you that space?
Yeah. I think my first thing we did was we entered the Dave Ramsey financial piece through our church.
I like it.
And we really enjoyed that program. And I'm a type of person that likes a program. And so once I had that program in place where I really could sit down and start to look at my, just track my financials for 3 months and start to say, what should it cost me to buy food? What should it cost me for my cars? And then you start to see where your money's going. And once you see that, that to me is how the first step to really then deciding where might you start to create room for yourself.
Right.
And, for about, I would say 5 or 6 years, my wife knew I was pretty serious because, we didn't have anything. We had the rabbit ears on the TV. We sold, I had just bought a new truck right when we started Financial Peace. Within like 4 months, we sold it and bought 2 used cars. And got them paid off. And so, as I started to do that, the snowball really started to go on freeing up space to create money to invest with.
Nice. Now, so first of all, the rabbit ears is amazing. That is an absolute classic. If you don't know what rabbit ears are, that's basically either you have a little dome that sits on top of the TV. It's got two little things pointing out, and those are rabbit ears. Or you might have grown up in the 80s and the 90s and your grandparents told you, here, take this hanger and stand in front of the TV and move it around.
A lot of, I think the last time we talked, I told you the only channel we could really get was the WB. And so we got to know all these, and I love Martin, the show Martin, but all that was on for 4 years was Martin at nighttime after dinner time. And so my kids knew all the Martin episodes, and we love Martin, but it was like the 10-year-old reruns. And I guess is what we watched.
Listen, there is nothing wrong. And I told you this before, there's absolutely nothing wrong with loving Martin. Martin was an excellent show, and it still holds its weight now. Right? So all right, so you got the money together, you got yourself together on that part of it. Now, when you're going because you chose to not go straight to $670,000 doors or whatever it is, or whatever units, you chose to go smaller first. What was that experience like going small? And do you feel like that was the right choice? Just as you look hindsight now, being 2020, you think that was the right choice, or do you feel like you should have gone into 20 units or a bigger multifamily first?
No, I think it was right. Doing the single families, and really the next step for me was in 2013. I decided to liquidate those single families, and I said, okay, well, I'm gonna go bigger, right? I think I'm ready to go bigger, and so I freed up all my capital, and I was sitting, and I started just looking and thinking through it, and I really sat for 3 years. And didn't take action, which was probably a bad decision in retrospect, because when prices were you could have picked up so many deals, but I was in the middle of having a bunch of kids and having babies and moving and career, and so I kind of wasted a few years there, and so by 2016, I had the cash out, and I started to think about what am I going to do? And so in 2018, I actually kind of said, okay, I'm going to go big. And so I started just looking for deals.
Right.
And I don't know what I'm doing. Right. And I actually joined Jake and Gino, which is a great little group that was educational, kind of mentoring program that gave you another framework, much like Financial Peace, but how to underwrite a deal, what to look for in an inspection, how to write a letter of intent, and so I was doing all the right things from an education perspective and reading, but I was really just struggling to figure out how do I go have a conversation about $1 million property or even an $800,000 property. And so what I kind of, one of the recommendations that I got from Gino at the time, and this was before they got big, and Gino gave me some feedback. He said, hey, you should start a meetup. And I said, I should start a meetup. And so I said, okay. So, I go online and Facebook, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a meetup, and start it up, and I go pick up some stuff at Panera, some bagels and some coffee, and we go and we sit down. And I did that for 4 or 5 months, had a virtual meetup and one like in a Panera, and that went really well. But I got to just start meeting people in the marketplace,
Right.
and out of that came a relationship where a guy said, "Hey, you should talk to this broker. She's been really helpful and giving me some deals, and you should check her out." And so I talked to her. I reached out to her, talked to her, and she said, "Okay, well, what are you looking for?" And this is, I think, one of the big issues with most early investors is, I didn't know. I don't know. I want $1 million property.
Right.
Or I
Just throw
want
something
I
out
want to
there.
be rich. Yeah, I want to be rich. Tell me that. Okay, yeah, great. That's real
Right.
helpful.
Narrows
So
down a bit.
yeah, so she kind of put me on her list, and so I said, really, I kind of pretty quickly came to a point after looking at deals for about 18 months. And I put in some offers that just couldn't get them to go. And these were like $1 million offers, but I was always coming in second, third, fourth, fifth, 20th in line.
Right.
I reached out to her and I'm like, hey, how about I go small? Let's go buy a duplex. And she said, okay, well, pick a duplex out of the MLS that I send you every week, and I'll help you go buy it. And so she was testing me, right?
Right.
She was like, I don't know, this guy just keeps calling me, but he's not actually taking any action. And so I actually went ahead and found a duplex and put an offer in and got it under contract. And so we can kind of go into why that was and kind of where we go from there. But that was kind of, to answer your question about why start small. I think I did because I didn't know what else to do. And then even though my mind had shifted, go bigger, go multifamily, I still really needed another step in small, which was like one more unit, like go from one house to a duplex, like
Right.
2 doors, and so I think for me, it was the right next step.
Right. But that makes sense though, because that's like you said, for you it's the right next step. I think it's really dependent on people themselves, right? What kind of situation are you in? How comfortable you
Yeah.
feel? How much risk are you willing to take? Because I
Yep.
imagine going from 0 to 200 doors has got to be super stressful. As
Yeah.
a, yeah. So matter of fact, let's talk about that. Because you went from 2, I believe you went to a quad, right? A fourplex, right?
No, I actually went from the 2. So I bought the 2
Okay.
in late 2019, and it was one that I needed to rehab. And this was I would recommend this to anyone. Like, go get a duplex. Go buy a low cost duplex in a place where you can rent it, where you can make a little money. You may not be a killer deal, but I was able to actually go in and do the rehab myself. I was the general contractor. I'm like calling these guys. I'm picking up the painted Sherwin-Williams. I'm dropping it off. It helped me understand how much doors cost,
Right.
refrigerator, everything, flooring,
Right.
paint. And I got it down. I rehabbed both sides and rented it. I evicted somebody, so I got an eviction under my belt. I got 2 rehabs under my belt and got it re-rented and put in place professional property management. And so I was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. It took me like 4 months, but now I kind of understand where I'm at.
Right.
Um, so my next step was I went to a local meetup, but not one that I was running, but a local one, a Bigger Pockets meetup. And the broker was there that I had bought this one with, and she said she was introducing me to a bunch of people. Hey, this is Derrick. He just
Right.
bought a duplex. Get to know other investors. She's like, and I think I told you this before. She looked at me and she's like, I think I'm ready to take him to show him something bigger.
You're right.
And I said, okay, let's do it, and not like 2 weeks later, she actually called me up and said, hey, I got an off market 16 unit set of 8 duplexes in a row on a street. She's
Right.
like, I think it would be the perfect deal for you. It's pretty light value add. It's just mostly cosmetic. It's not like, in a nice area. And you can push the rents. And that was, we went and looked at it and I put an offer in.
Man, but all right. So where were you? So that's, oh my goodness. So it's all over the place right now. So when I heard this story before, the part that stood out to me, number one, was your broker.
Yep.
How important is it, do you think, to have somebody like that who is, because you hit really you lucked out with that because you had like she not only was she driven to help you out, but you had already proven yourself that kind of thing to her. She knew you wanted to get into it, and then she was kind of, let's be honest, she kind of kicked you out the plane and told you to fly. How difficult do you feel like is it for people to meet that kind of person now, and how would somebody go about meeting a broker like that and really setting themselves up for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to get in the market, right?
Right.
Had Gino not told me to go start a meetup where I was bringing I didn't know anything, by the way, right? At this point, I had a couple of single family houses, and I said I wanted to do multifamily, and I actually named the meetup Multifamily Meetup, right?
Right.
And I show up, and
That's
I'm
a
like,
good name, by the way. That's a really good name. Excellent choice.
yeah. I'm like, hey, this guy is having a multifamily meetup. Everybody shows up, they want to know about multifamily, but I don't even have one.
Right.
So I'm faking it a little bit. But we're talking. But I'm kind of just using a lot of the materials that I had gained from just educating myself and starting a conversation and really letting the room take it from there. But out of that, some 2-3 connections that I still talk to this day have put me in touch with not only that broker, but bankers. One of the guys that came actually just did all of the asphalt on one of my latest acquisitions in my parking lot. But if you're in it and you're with those people, and you really kind of change that mindset to be, I'm an investor, I'm a real estate investor, I'm a multifamily investor. You put yourself in those places, you'll find that person that you're looking for. You gotta go, but you gotta be there, right? You gotta be in it.
Right. Man, yeah, that's holy moly. So just off of you doing that, creating that meetup, because this is before COVID, right? So this is all physical meetup stuff.
Yeah, this is 2019, 2018, yeah.
So do you feel, you think it would have the same impact now if it was all, a lot of the stuff we're doing is virtual. Would it be the same with all virtual? Or you think like the physical meetup kind of sets it apart?
Yeah, I think getting face to face with people really does make a difference. And being willing, like I'll tell you, the broker that I work with, she also had a friend that was coming in from California into Kansas City buying real estate. Her name's Lee, and so Lee was buying a property, and she actually came by that duplex the day that I walked it with my broker Michelle, and she was like. She just said, "Oh, I just want to check it out." And so we were just chit chatting, and she's like, "Oh, I'm buying this 24 unit up in a certain part of KC." She's like, "We just bought it. I'm doing some rehab," and I'm like, "Hey, can I come see it with you?" And she's like, "Well, I'm going to be up there this weekend changing locks. Come up and you can check it out." And so again, it's just so I drive like 40 minutes to this apartment building that I don't know, but and she owns it. But I just wanted to see what did a 24 unit in that part of town look like, what was her plan to do with it. But so, it's amazing once you see these things with your eyes and you're in it. Like I said, you start it takes a lot of the fear away because you have so much fear in taking that step. But when you just go stand with someone in a 24 unit building and it's like in a bad part of town and she lays out her vision for how she's going to change it into something new, and she buys it for like $800,000, and seriously 4 months later she sells it for $2.5 million. You're like, how does that even happen? And that's really what happened for her. And I'm like, gosh, like, how do you
what am I doing?
How did you see that? And so like it's just go find them, go find where they're at, be around them. And don't be afraid to ask, like, hey, let me just tag along. Let me go with you. Let me see.
That's excellent advice. That's really, really good advice. Because you can learn more just by being around people like that. And we all say that, right? We all hear it. But it's an absolute fact. Like, if you really think about how much you learn from any sport just by watching it. Imagine walking through a building, and this actually happened to me, walking through a building with a construction or your contractor guy, and he's like, "Oh, the floor's leaning." Like, you automatically learn all about flooring and the foundation and what to look for, all that great stuff. So that's really, really good advice.
You've never seen a boiler. You've never seen a bad foundation. You've never seen what termites look like. Like it all sounds terrible, right? Like, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world. But once you're there, you're like, oh, that's a termite trail. Like, yeah, it takes like $200 and it'll be gone. It's like, oh, like, that isn't so.
Okay, got it. Right, right. That's better than I thought. That's absolutely true. Now, let me ask you this, Derek. Because her pushing you out the plane, that had to be kind of a shock, right? So you're already on this path of scaling. How did you deal with that discomfort? Because that's a hellified discomfort when it comes to, you're going from a duplex to this larger multifamily property.
Yeah, so this multifamily property, about 16 units in Belton, Missouri. It was being run by a mom and pop shop. Two brothers, and a brother had a wife. Getting older, they'd owned a bunch of properties. The brothers didn't like each other anymore. Needed to get rid of it, right? Like it was perfect. Like it was a good scenario. You had motivated sellers. The market was good though. They wanted a good price. They had no real financials. Most of these people were paying these people cash, so they didn't actually have P&Ls you could look at and that had any real information in them. So it was really hard to gauge like what was happening, and so that created a problem. And our closing date was on March 25th of 2020. And I don't know if you know what was going on March 25th of 2020, but it was like, it was COVID central, right? The world was in the middle of shutting down, and my broker was actually in Cancun on a beach, and I called her because we were in Denver with my family, and I was like, I can't close on this. Like I was like flipping out. I'm like, I don't know. Like they're shutting the world down. Like our schools all got canceled. Everyone's going down. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, I don't think we can close. And she kind of like talked us off the ledge 3 days before and got us to go. But yeah, you're right. Like we were really afraid because that was a $1.6 million purchase.
Wow.
On those 16 doors. And so really, really scared. But, I think at the end of the day, it was kind of like the desire to move forward really came down to one is the assets have a certain amount of value that I thought like to build these new, like my downside was capped, right? Like you couldn't build this. This was like 2,000 year build duplexes that I was buying for 106 a pop each door. Right. And you couldn't build it. So I was like, okay, I think we're covered on the downside. We may lose our deposit, our down payment, me and my partner, but we can't go below that. And, and at some point I was like, I'm just going to bet that people need a place to live and this is a good market. I understand the rents and you kind of just take the step and you go. And, to be honest, it wasn't that bad.
Wow. So there's so much to unpack there. So you really just, because you had the panic moment. I think people kind of misunderstand how big a panic moment when you're starting to real estate invest you can get into. And I experienced it with a single family flip. God only knows why I did, but I gotta do what? And it wasn't even my flip. That was the bad part. It wasn't even my flip. And I'm like, oh man, how are we gonna do this? Like I'm clutching my pearls sitting there talking to my mentor. But it's nuts how you have to experience that. I think that's like almost like a rites of passage for a lot of investors. Like you go through that, and then when you come on the other side, you're like, oh, that wasn't that big a deal, right?
You build the story in your brain about all the bad things. Like it's going to go to zero. I'm going to owe $1.6 million to a bank. They're going to take my house, my family, everything. Like it's like, wait a minute. Like let me do the math here. Like we've had an inspection. These are all well-built, good pieces of property. Like at worst, like these are worth. You can't build them. For the price, below a certain price. Like it is, you have a downside. And then if you're at least a little bit smart and you do just a little bit of good work on operating them
Hmm.
over a 5 year span, you can work yourself out of any, like maybe it wasn't a great deal on the front end, but you can work yourself out by operating them well, managing your expenses, slowly raising rents, improving the operations. Like, and you just have to kind of get to that point where you're like, there isn't this like, you make it or you like die. It's like there's like this middle ground where it's gonna be okay, and you're gonna get through this. And yeah, there'll be some bumps in the road, but it's not as bad as you might think it might be.
So sorry about that technical difficulty there, y'all. But nonetheless, so um, with that being said, Derek, what to you? Because it sounds like there's a couple key points there, right? So the first thing was having your numbers together, knowing exactly how much you were putting in, how much you were getting out, knowing all that stuff. The second
Yep.
piece to me that you had was absolutely knowing that it was going to be something that you were working forward with, and you had an amazing broker to kind of push you along the way. What do
Yep.
you feel like the third piece to your puzzle is? Because that's only two pieces, and I'm sure there's like 500 steps you could really go over your head, but we only got like 30, 40 minutes. So, well, not left, but over this entire. You know what? Never mind. But you only got so much time. But with all the stuff that you did, what do you feel like was a third step, a third thing that got you the ability to scale and really succeed in that scale?
Yeah, I think I also went out and partnered with a partner that had some funds, right? You know,
Right.
and so that's one. But I would also say probably even more important
Mm-hmm.
was I built a network of people to help me actually run this. Right. I have
Right.
a day job. I have a W-2, and my wife stays home, and she's pretty active in this. And she's actually this last year we actually got her qualified as a real estate professional.
Hey,
Um,
awesome.
so, so yeah, so even some more benefits to owning real estate once you get down that path. But having a team, getting all the connections to bankers, to property managers, to all the other types of vendors you need, whether it's HVAC, rehab teams, and a lot of these come through your property management organization
Right.
or other pieces. But getting that piece, um, it's not like running 16 units.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually just in April we closed on 17 more, so we're up to like
Wow.
35, 37 units now.
Nice.
um, and in the last in the last month put offers in on a 42 and another 36. um, didn't get them, my last, but like that
Right.
happened. You got to
Right.
put in offers. You got to take the shot
Absolutely.
if you want to try to make one. But
Absolutely.
once you have that team in place, it makes it easier and easier to manage this. And really, now um, you're overseeing this team that you have in place. Is
Right.
really like the CEO of this business, right? And
Right.
kind of getting your mindset around, like, I'm running a business here, and I have this team members that run operations. I have team members that run our finance division. I have team members that run our marketing and lead division. Like you start to think through it like
Right.
this.
Right.
You're running a business.
Right. Absolutely. Because you can't do everything.
No,
That is the one thing you learn very quickly. You can't do
yes,
everything. Now,
probably
so
don't want it, by the way.
oh man,
I don't.
you know what? I could imagine giving that a shot and it not working. Like that's really tough to do. You're doing all the marketing, you're doing all the managing, you're dealing with tenants, you're dealing with the pay process, you're dealing with somebody's roof falls in for whatever God known reason. God forbid that happens, but that seems like a monster in itself to deal with. How did you? All right, so that transition from small to large, we talked about that. My question to you is, what was the biggest difference? What was the biggest difference that was kind of shocking to you when you went from the small property to a larger multifamily property?
Everyone always says this. Like once you start to do bigger ones,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna say, You go get a duplex and you run it for a year, and then you go buy a 10, a 12, a 16, whatever, 24. You're going to be like, it's first one, when you start buying commercially,
Hmm.
the financing is ridiculously easy. Like, they don't ask for anything. Like, does
What?
the property pay for this? Yes or no, right? That's what it comes down to. Yeah, you got to throw a tax return over to them, but I mean, it's not this huge exam. And so I would say the biggest like surprise that you have is that, wow, this is actually, the bigger you go, it's actually the easier. Now it's scarier and there's more risk, if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have the right team around you.
Hmm.
But it is actually easier and it's less time.
So really, the financing itself is based on the property and not the person.
Correct. Because they don't care about if you're a W-2. They don't care about how much money you make. You're taking out a loan for $1.8 million, right? They're like,
Right, they would get that money.
it's going to take you 47 years to pay this back. Like, I hope,
Right, right.
I'm already 41. I might not be alive, right? The bank's not going to make that bet. They want to make the bet that apartment complex that has 17 doors,
Right.
that you can get the $950 a month rent so that you can cover that debt service, right? Like for the next 7, 10 years. That's what those banks are making a determination on, and do they trust that you'll operate it correctly?
Right.
That I mean, that's how it is. It's not about how much money you make, and I think that's a big change in people's minds.
Now
They gotta.
you have a very specific set of skills when it comes to, and sorry, I didn't mean to quote Liam Neeson there, but you have a specific set of skills when it comes to the fintech piece, and that gives you a different view on how money works. What is when that offer, you pull that property in and you're looking to get the loan and all that great stuff? What exactly are the banks looking at, and then how did you set up to make sure you were able to hit all those kind of buttons on the way up?
Yeah, I mean, when I get a property, it's funny. I met my banker at CrossFit, at my CrossFit gym,
Okay.
but I have
It's
about
weird.
four other
Fellow
bankers that
person.
I
Okay.
talk to too. But as soon as you get a property in, I create like an email that
Mm-hmm.
says, here's a property we're looking at. Here's the financials they were able to give us. Here are, can you pull a lot of these banks will pull a CoStar report for you. If you don't know what a CoStar report, it's like 115 pages, that'll tell you every comp property that they're going to look at, how much rent each one of those properties is doing,
Wow.
what they're valued at the last time they sold, the price they sold for, any new builds going around, vacancy rates, like these banks will like feed you this information, and it really helps you dial in your underwriting because it's what they're using to dial in theirs. And you go ask a question like, hey, can you pass me the CoStar report? And most banks will just print you off one, or they'll
Wow.
email you. And it's a great thing to do, and get you more information. But you send that over, and then through the process, you're kind of like just telling the story. Like, here's how much we're gonna here's what we're looking to get for. I kind of end my email with, here's the deal. Here's the information we have. We're
Right.
looking for. Usually we go in with like, hey, we would like, we were going to put 25% down on this property.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for a 10-year term. If you give me seven, great. I'm looking for this rate, based on what we know the rates are at. And a lot of times I ask right up front, hey, can you give me a year of interest only so that I can stabilize the property? I can use the extra cash flow to go in and update some units and do some of that stuff. And usually that right there is my email, and
Mm-hmm.
the banker will come back and just start emailing you back and forth like, okay, I like it. Here's what I think. Here's where we can probably do. And you just kind of start building out your offers.
What? So that seems like it. That sounds as easy as you said it was earlier. That sounds so simple. Now, all right. So let me ask you this: the CoStar report. Are you able to use that now that you have a CoStar report for a set area? Do you feel like
Yep.
that helps you on the other side when you go back to hunting? So when you're looking around and you have all the comps, you have all that information. Does that make you more dangerous when you get on the other side of that CoStar report?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It usually will give you, because they'll usually target your property that you're looking at, and then they'll give
Right.
you a mile or 3 mile radius around there. And so then you kind of really pull in everything around that, and they'll usually pull in like 10 comps or so. And so in that 3 mile radius, if you've kind of dialed in, that's where you want to be, you're going to get a pretty good look at every single property, and it tells you who owns it, right? And it tells you the management companies that are operating in that space, right? And so like a lot of this information starts to come in, and you're like, okay, well, there's the list of managers I should be considering. Here's the realtors that sold these, right? Or the brokers that sold them. Here's the ownership teams that own them. And so I think, that's it's super helpful if you've dialed into a market and you know exactly where you want to be.
Wow. Okay. So that's interesting information, because that sounds just like, on the single family side, when you create your own comps, but you're creating your own comps. It's not the same as that CoStar report. That CoStar report sounds really in depth. And sounds really, really useful.
And a lot of times, the key is go to a good community bank and start to build a relationship. And that's where most of my relationships are, at local community banks. I haven't used Fannie and Freddie for like some of the small business loans where once you get over $1 million, you can get non-recourse, meaning, on a community bank, you're signing, you're kind of promising, I'll pay this if this doesn't work. On the Freddie Fannie stuff, agency debt, they're non-recourse. They still will come after you, but it's a little less stringent, but it's a lot harder to get them because there's a lot more paperwork and reserves and all sorts of fun stuff. And there you got to think through.
Right, absolutely. Because that's non-recourse and recourse are probably the two staples a lot of investors that I've met look at when they're looking at money. That's the first thing they're looking at. Are they going to come after me? If so, what do they come after? Because regardless of what you do, they're coming after something. Something's gonna get done if you're not paying. But it's all dictated whether they're going after the property or they're going after your personal property. Those are two different things. So definitely something you want to look into. Now, how does that conversation go? Because that's something I've always been curious about. When you go to a local bank or your community bank, like you said, how do you introduce yourself if you have nothing, and then how do you develop that relationship?
Well, like I said, I knew I knew a couple of the bankers, and a lot of times I'll tell you, like, again, the broker has a lot of these connections, whether it's property manager, bankers, and if a good broker is working with you, a lot of times they're gonna say, "Here's 3 bankers. I'm gonna start the conversation, make the contact, and then you guys take it from here."
Right.
And those bankers normally know that broker brings good deals and good people to actually close the deal. So I would say that's how it goes. But generally, I think if you're starting, create a pitch deck for yourself. If you've got some single families and you've got some, and maybe you've gone and bought a duplex or a fourplex, where you can buy it just like on a normal 30-year, normal loan, just like you would have done if you were buying your own house. Which is what I did on my first duplex. You can tell that story, what you did, and most of them aren't. I've seen they don't push too hard on that. Again, it comes back to, is that property going to work, right? Is it going to make a difference? And do you have a property management organization wrapped around it where they feel comfortable that it's going to get run well too?
Okay, that makes perfect sense. I'd never thought about the pitch deck aspect. I actually wrote that down in my notes. I'm going to be creating a pitch deck. I only got 2 properties, but we'll work it out. We're going to make it pretty.
Hey, I'll tell you that right there. Be like, here's what I've done. I bought it at this price. Yeah. I did these things to it. I rented it for this. Like a banker's be like, oh, wow, this guy actually, put some work in. He knows what he's doing.
Right.
Okay, well, he did it on these 2. He can probably do it on, buy a place with 16 units. Well, he's just got to do it 16 times. Just rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
Say no more. I'm creating a pitch deck. Okay. So when you're talking to brokers,
I'll send you mine, Oliver. I'll send you mine.
Please. Yes, please. And thank you. That'd be amazing. Yeah. And for those of you listening, maybe one day I'll share you guys the same thing too, but I got to go through it first. Nonetheless, so one thing you talked about was the broker. What would you say is 3 things that someone should look for when they find a broker to know whether they're like your broker, or how else do I put this? They're not a deadbeat, if you will. I don't know how else to
Well,
put it.
no. I think one is, um, do they own property? Like, do they own property themselves? I
Mm,
personally love brokers that own property and are doing what I want to do.
mm-hmm.
Michelle and Lee, who I referenced, they are in the market. They own property. They are buying stuff right now, and they're looking
Wow.
for deals. And so that's one thing, is because if they're running their own properties, I mean, I still to this day, I'm like, hey, AC unit just went out, Michelle. Like, what's a good price? I'm getting this price from my PM. What are you getting? And they're like, Jesus, respond back, right?
I
Here
love
it
it.
is, $2,400. I'm like, okay,
Right.
got it done. I can validate like where are we at. But so like that stuff is really important, especially when you're walking a property and trying to get your kind of your bearings around what's it going to take to turn this into your vision of what you want to
Right.
do with it. So that's number one. Number two, do they have? It's interesting when you find the good ones,
Mm-hmm.
they're almost hard to get to know. They almost want you to chase them. It's really weird. If they're looking for you, they probably aren't very good. um,
Oh, okay.
and so that's what I've found. Like, it's funny. I'll like see people walk up to the broker that I work with the most, and she'll be like, "I don't give out cards," and no, I don't give out my number. Um, she's like, "No, no." And like, she's really, really hard
Right.
to contact with her, and I think she's weeding out tire kickers. Um,
Mm.
because she doesn't want to waste her time. And so I think find that broker that's hard to get to know, and then figure out where they're at. Figure out, like, be persistent. Be persistent to go get on their schedule, get on their radar, and figure out if there's something really simple and easy you can do. You know,
Okay.
hey, I got $50,000. I want to buy a property that is this dollar amount in this area of town. You probably know something out there that's easy and quick. Like, just let me know what it is. Like, right,
Right.
and then go close it. Right, like that's the kind of like stuff that they want. They want it to be like super simple. I think out of the gate to get to the bigger stuff.
Okay. That makes sense. So one was, do they own property? Two, find the one that's hard to get to know. What would you say is the third?
Man,
Pressing you for the hard questions today, Derek.
yeah, man, that's a good one. I'm trying to think. What's the third thing? I think one that is one that's creative in closing deals, because if they understand the market and they own the
Mm-hmm.
property, they'll have like these interesting things that you do inside of deals that I don't even think of this stuff. Like, we bought that 16 unit, and I did this on my last 17 unit as well.
Right.
Where as you're buying it, maybe there's a vacant unit or two, right? Or one's going to go vacant during your 60 days of due diligence. And you write into the contract, I didn't even know this was possible, but write into the contract, during that 60 days, I want to test this, my hypothesis that you're undercharging rent, right? I have it under
Right.
contract, but when that vacant goes on the market and you need to market it over the next 60 days, I want it priced not $800 a month, which is what you have it out at. I want you to price it at 950 or 1,000.
Right.
And for 30 days, you like, before your money goes hard, you can actually see, like, does your hypothesis work on every single one of the deals that I've done so far. I've
Mm-hmm.
proven that I can take rents from 800 to $1,200
Wow.
on those vacant units during due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm walking in and I already know, like, my business plan's going to work. Look, I was able in that 60 days to actually rent these units that were vacant before I even took over, and get the price we want, so we can just keep going and just hit the ground running as soon as we close. And so, like, stuff like that is really interesting, I think. And so maybe question the brokers around what are some interesting tactics as you're thinking about closing a deal, that they would recommend you got to think through.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So we do have a question before we hit the last two questions. There, we do have one question, and the
Awesome.
question's asked by Tom, and Tom asks, "What is your favorite part about what you've been doing in multifamily so far?"
My favorite part is I'm a numbers guy from being in fintech, but I like the numbers side of it
Oh
and
God, here we
seeing
go. Derek, don't take me down this path. Don't do it. I'm just playing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
seeing that you take over a property. Let's just say you're producing $11,000 a month
Right.
in revenue. And you figure out a way, and you implement this plan, you see it go to 16,000, and so you've improved your NOI, your net operating income, by let's say 5,000, and then you start to just take the you take $5,000 of NOI improvement, and you divide that by 0.06, a six cap, and you
Right.
see what the impact that is on the value of that property. Like, to me, I'm like, wow, every dollar we put into this property is just growing the value of the property like exponentially. And so
Right.
working through that is like really fun for me. And so it makes staying on top of property managers and working through some of the key issues to turn over a couple units to get bad tenants out and get new good ones in there that make the community better. It really just makes that hard work
Right.
easier and more fun.
I like it. I like it. I stink at numbers, so I cannot relate on the number side, but I do understand how fun it can be kind of to figure out some of those things, kind of put that puzzle together. So that absolutely makes sense to me. And thank you for for asking the question on that one too, by the way, for the listener. All right, so Derek, last two questions, and we always just about close it out the same if we haven't covered it. And I think one of them we haven't covered yet. So, or matter of fact, both of them we haven't covered. So we're gonna do troop to task. And what troop to task is, Derek, is you give the listener slash viewer one thing they can do right now to get started on the path that you're on.
Yep. So I kind of talked about this one, but like step one, go find your market wherever you want to be, wherever you want to invest, and go get integrated into all those groups out there that are meeting. And if there isn't a group meeting, go start your own. Go on Facebook tomorrow. Set up your own meetup. I guarantee you, and you blast it out over Facebook or whatever meetup site you use. People will show up hungry to learn and listen, and you'll start to meet people. But you got to go get engaged in the market and start to meet people, and a lot of opportunities will flow from that.
I love it. The Facebook recommendation is a beast. That is the best place to get to. A lottie dottie everybody on the interwebs is hitting
Yep.
Facebook and really going there and talking to people. So last question. Last question. We closing it out after this, Derek. So the question is our most difficult and complicated question. I actually need to make some theme music for this. But anyway, the question is, what question do you wish you were asked more often, and what would be the answer to that question?
Oh, man, this one's tough. I was thinking about it since you sent it to me. I think back to this idea that you're the CEO of this business, and you
Right.
think about these, you think about a 16 unit or a 17 unit, right? Me and one of my partners, we talk about it. It's like you kind of start to think about it like this: that business is a $200,000 business,
Right.
$200,000 a year business in revenue from a revenue perspective, or $220,000. And so, as that CEO, I think you have to be asking yourself, if you're going to be running a $200,000 business, who do I have to win over to help me be successful in running this business? And I kind
Right.
of think about that as back to, um, is it a broker to get deal flow? Is
Mm-hmm.
it someone to help with our money side of this? Is it an operator to help me run day to day because I got money and I got deals, but I don't know how to. I don't have the time, right?
Right.
And don't be afraid to go small. But I think you got to be asking yourself, what's that? And people say it all the time. It's not. It's like who's the who you need in your life.
Right.
And I think you got to have the who's to solve the problem you're dealing with. And if you're not going and putting people in your life that are there to help you.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of you are on this thing right now, listening to Oliver and all the different people he has coming on. Reach out to them, like, find out if they're in your market and figure out, like, hey, can I tag along? Like, go get those people in your life because they can help you solve the problems and put pieces together for you.
I like it. I like it. That's I wrote that down. Basically, I wrote down self awareness because it just how you put it. It kind of sounds like, hey, once you know what you're good at, stick with what you're good at, and find people to fill those blanks in. Because, like I said, I'm not a numbers guy, so I can tell you right now, I'm calling Derrick. So immediately calling Derrick. Derrick, I don't know what these things are saying. I don't know what the cap rate is. I don't know how much I need to be putting down. I don't even know how many people are staying inside the property. I need help. I'm going to call Derrick and get some help on the numbers. So thank you so much, Derrick, for coming on again today, man. It has been absolutely amazing. I want to make sure people are able to get in contact with you or shoot you a message or even support you in whatever you're doing. How can people do that and where can they find you?
Yeah, you can reach out. I see you got my Instagram on here, so that's a good place. Reach out through there. I'm on Facebook as well. Just Derrick Carpenter. You'll see my bald head on there. Yeah, reach out. And I'd love to on Messenger or anything, and love to chat with anyone that has any questions. If you're in the Kansas City market, I'd love to grab coffee with you. That'd be cool too.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, those of you watching, those of you who are listening, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining myself and my man Derrick over here in this window on this side. I did it right this time. Last time, Derrick, I did it wrong. I pointed the other way. Yeah, it's so difficult. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of this. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought about this. Let me know what your thoughts are on the multifamily, just scaling from 0 to 100 as quickly as possible and what you're going to do to take that action. All right. So until next time, I'm the Oliver Perry. You can catch me at the Oliver Perry on all platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you again so much for coming on. Derrick, thank you again for coming on again. Thank you again so much. And I did it again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have a great night. We're out of here.
Yeah.